I think by now everyone in the Kirby community knows the story of Taranza and Queen Sectonia, regarded as one of the saddest and most messed up stories in Kirby lore right behind Haltman. But with new details that have slowly been revealed in the most obscure ways, their story might be even more depressing and dark than we previously thought. And just in time for the 10th year anniversary of Kirby Triple Deluxe. But first, a summary of the original story. Two spiders, Taranza and Queen Sectonia, ruled over the islands in the sky called Floralia. They ruled over the people of the sky, either flower creatures or people who use flowers as clothing, with mysterious magic powers. One day, Taranza decides to give Sectonia a gift, and decides to steal the entire dimensional mirror out of the sky, as she's obsessed with beauty, and give it to her. It's unknown if Taranza had any idea about its powers or not. The mirror once had the power to reflect wishes. Perhaps this is why he stole it. But what he definitely didn't know is that ever since Darkmind invaded the mirror, it could only reflect bad things. For some unexplained reason, Shadow Kirby had left the mirror world with no defender and a permanently damaged atmosphere. Only hatred and other bad thoughts have festered in the mirror. Which, as a side note, Darkmind is the physical embodiment of negative thoughts, meaning he most likely has returned to the mirror world. Loving her gift, she stared endlessly into it day and night, but all the negativity seeping out of the mirror was slowly corrupting her mind. Becoming crueler and colder by the second, the only thing that she cared about anymore was vanity, and she was unsatisfied with her current beauty and did something to become a wasp, and then she imprisoned the people of the sky. Taranza is then instructed to kidnap the hero of the lower world, and you know everything that happened after that. Taranza kidnaps Dedede, mistaking him for the hero. Sectonia blasts Taranza for screwing up. Kirby and Taranza and Dedede team up to defeat Sectonia, and she gets completely, absolutely mega killed. At least that's what we thought the story was. But with only 2 new details, it changes everything. One of the few stories in Kirby that was easy to understand has now been completely flipped on its head. The first new detail was in Super Kirby Clash. Her outfit says her wasp appearance was borrowed from one of her closest friends. On its own, this could just be interpreted as she mimicked her form. But in Kirby's Dream Buffet, it was revealed through the name of a bot that this character's true name is Joronia. And in Return to Dreamland Deluxe, while not confirming her name, it reaffirms that this character is not named Sectonia by just calling her old friend. This is not Sectonia. Sectonia was her friend. Joronia didn't just mimic Sectonia. She stole her body like a parasite, took her name, and replaced her. This has truly taken a turn for the dark. In the real world, there exists parasitic wasps that turn spiders into zombies by laying eggs in them. The babies usually pop out xenomorph style, but I've seen a video of an unusual case where a wasp had sliced open the head of another bug, carved out its insides, and wore the bug like a suit. When it was done with the body, it just pops out of its head like a trash can lid. I couldn't find the video, but I found a similar video called Leech Enters Crawfish Like a Suit of Armor, so the phenomenon does exist. In Kirby, we seem to be seeing the reverse, a parasitic spider that's hijacked the body of a wasp. But things get worse. Joronia's name is derived from the Joro spider, but may also be a reference to a certain mythical creature that also starts with Joro, a giant spider that can transform into a beautiful woman to lure men to her lair to eat. Basically that episode of Gravity Falls that everyone hates. Okay, let's take a step back. We have conflicting evidence on our hand, and it can lead to a multitude of possibilities. Theory 1. Joronia is a manipulator that used Taranza for her bidding. This is the worst theory on this list. It relies entirely on her being based on this folklore, and while she is inspired, it can easily be heavily altered just like the real-life inspiration. The only piece of evidence is this line that says Sectonia bewitched Taranza, and this other one that says Sectonia's parasitic species survives by leeching power from other life forms until they're weak enough to be controlled, which doesn't have to necessarily refer to Taranza. It blatantly conflicts with everything we know. She was a perfectly normal individual before the mirror. If she was always evil, how was she corrupted? The transforming thing doesn't add up because she stole her body. They say Taranza's feelings never touched her heart. If she was the one that instigated their romance, this makes no sense at all. And overall, it makes this story go from a tragedy to a complete horror story, with Taranza being a completely innocent victim who does not deserve any of this. Theory 2. Taranza and Joronia aren't royalty. This is possible, but highly unlikely. If Joronia was the queen, why does no one question when their queen suddenly becomes a completely different person and they can't even find a body of the original? Well, very easy answer actually. For all we know, the instant Joronia body snatched was the breaking point. She most likely immediately started imprisoning the people and whatnot. In one line of pause screen, it says Sectonia seized control over Floralia. But think about that for a minute. From an outsider's perspective, it would look like that because it was previously ruled by Joronia, not Sectonia. Another thing that would make it less likely that they aren't royal is their clothes are very fancy when the normal citizens have basic plant clothes. But the nail in the coffin is in the English version of Dream Buffet's bot name is Q Joronia, short for Queen Joronia. Pretty much confirmed that she was always the queen, but let's still analyze the narrative potential. First, it means Taranza was actually loved back by Joronia because it only says his feelings were never touched by the queen he served. If she was never the queen, then perhaps his feelings did touch her heart. Also, it makes Taranza an even more dedicated individual, because if he was in power, you can imagine stealing a legendary artifact would be easier, but just one guy? That's dedication. Theory 3. Taranza never loved Joronia. Another theory that hurts my very soul. Taranza always calls her Sectonia despite presumably knowing she was Joronia. I can understand keeping the facade for the people, but why would he call her that on his own? And why does getting corrupted by the mirror lead to an amplification of her desire for beauty? What if Taranza loved Sectonia, but not Joronia? The reason Joronia took Sectonia's body was because Taranza loved Sectonia, but she wanted him, so she simply became the person that he would love. It also means this line means Sectonia never reciprocated his love, but Joronia did. And the saddest thing is in Joronia's desperation to be loved, she had become too cold and no longer cared. Two more pieces of evidence is in a Kirby Twitter post we see Taranza looking at a constellation of Sectonia's face, not Joronia. And when he summons Dark Taranza in Kirby Clash Deluxe, which happened in search for her, he has the torso that resembles Sectonia. If you believe the mirror world beings are created on the spot, Taranza's thoughts manifesting into Sectonia instead of Joronia might imply that he wanted to bring her back more. There are immediately flaws with this theory. Going back to the evidence just mentioned, this could simply mean Taranza is a bit of a simp and found this body more attractive, but the person he loved was still Joronia. And Taranza was always shown to be the one simping, and in this version of the story, it would be her that wanted him. In Star Allies, we see a picture of him going after the mirror with Joronia in its reflection, pretty much proving that it was her that he loved the whole time. And just a rule of thumb, it would make more sense if he was attracted to his own species. Finally, the objectively correct theory. It's what you'd expect. Joronia is the queen, and Taranza is her right-hand man. Taranza loves her, but she doesn't quite understand. Taranza gives her the mirror, she goes crazy, steals a friend's body. But what's strange is, all the other theories seem to fit together like puzzle pieces, but they still contradict too much to be true. We aren't even done yet. In the Japanese version of Triple Deluxe, there's a pause screen that says, having continually leached the life of other creatures and possessed their bodies, which one was my actual form? A line from Sectonia. While the translation isn't 100% perfect, every translation I've seen of this line follows the same idea. And in Planet Robobot, there's one that says the flower that they cloned Sectonia from had data containing creatures spanning a period of 1,000 years. Now, in this text, multiple could just mean two, Joronia and Sectonia, but paired with the other, it seems more and more likely that Joronia has body snatched far more than once. Also, no one gives enough credit to the fact that Floralia and the people in it are proven to have been around for 1,000 years before Planet Robobot. Cherish this moment. It's one of the few times you're ever going to get a proper timeline placement in Kirby. But from what we've said so far, there should only be one body snatched, because Floralia should be in complete chaos for many years if new queens just kept taking over. But perhaps it was all done briefly in private, her calling the victims to a secret area to try on their bodies like dresses, discarding each one when it wasn't satisfying her crave for beauty. Let's be honest, none of the other Floralia inhabitants are particularly attractive. Could also have been an entirely behind-doors operation. Maybe not even Taranza knew. But even if he did, would this even bother him? This is the same species. If she can do this, isn't this a normal ability for them? Which leads to my final point about Sectonia, the annoying flip-flopping of the pause screens. The voice in the pause screens always changes its position. Sometimes it speaks from the perspective of an outsider, sometimes it gives all the info about something, and many times it speaks in a way where it clearly knows more than it's letting on, and is taunting you by dangling info over your head without explaining it. So when it says Sectonia's parasitic species, is it actually referring to joronia, or the actual Sectonia? Now, at the time, we didn't even know this character had a different form, so they might have left it a little confusing to not confuse the players. But thanks to the small possibility it actually is referring to the wasp Sectonia, we can't call this canon, and it remains as just a very likely true theory. One thing that rarely gets brought up are Sectonia's minions. She has her main henchmen called the Antlers, ants of varying sizes with magic elemental abilities, and then there's these bug versions of many of the normal enemies we face. And while we do see regional variants of some of the enemies, such as the Holocondrid versions, those are more akin to just races or breeds of a species, or are just reused assets and aren't related in canon. But what we're seeing here is clearly all the same bug, except arguably the Gordo. You can't say that this is just another breed of Waddle Dee. These are an entirely separate species, all becoming the same species of bug. We have another case of parasites on our hand. Only unlike joronia, these ones don't just take the body, they completely take over the body, fusing their DNA together, creating an entirely new being. Horrifying. I think we know what bugs are becoming these monsters. Look familiar? Out of all Floralia's inhabitants, there's only a couple of bugs, and the Antler is the only one with a matching face. Okay, back to Taranza. After the events of Kirby Triple Deluxe, Taranza still hasn't gotten over his lost queen, and his star allies goes to the altar of the Divine Terminus in hopes of bringing her back. Being the only character with an explained reason to go beat up Highness makes him most likely the character who canonically beats Morphonite in Guest Star, and kickstarts Heroes in Another Dimension when Highness sinks into the floor. Of course, it could also be Maglar or Susie, but it's rather fitting that the butterfly is defeated by the spider. In an alternate universe known as the Dream Kingdom, Taranza got it even worse. Taranza peers into the mirror that is now distorted so badly it's changed appearance to see if there's any remnants of joronia. He accidentally summons Dark Taranza, who manipulates him to summon monsters to release onto the kingdom. Dark Taranza summons forth Darkmind, now twisted into the shape of Dedede from Taranza's dark thoughts of who he thought to be the most savage individual. I want to pause to note that this sounds contradictory, as we were previously told Taranza believed Dedede was the hero of the lower world. But most savage can simply mean the strongest in this case. King D-Mind kills Dark Taranza, Team Kirby defeats D-Mind, shatters the mirror, and Taranza is free from the corruption. That is until an uncertain amount of time later, when Taranza would once again become a pawn. This time for Parallel Nightmare. Nightmare fakes his death and uses Taranza to throw Kirby off his trail. Taranza gets defeated and freed, and kinda becomes a loose end in this story. Taranza summons Darkmind again, as he's not tied to the mirror and can arise from any dark thoughts. Yet again in Dedede hybrid form, because Nightmare has his own history with Dedede. He bashes him away, Nightmare summons Galactonite, blah blah blah, you know what the rest is, and Taranza isn't involved. Going back to Star Allies, after the altar failed to revive her, he's finally searching for a new queen. We can see him prepare to talk to some girls in one of Star Allies' title screen skits. I think it's worth mentioning that Ribbon has technically been confirmed to be a minor, and the others here look quite young. Taranza has gray hair, and based on what we read earlier, might be over 1,000 years old. Make of that what you will. There you have it. The entire story of Taranza and Sectonia so far. If you want even more lore on Floralia, I talked a lot about it in my Necrotius video. Also, Magolor was there. Doesn't change anything in this particular story, but it's pretty neat. And happy 10th anniversary to Kirby Triple Deluxe, one of the best Kirby games ever.